We're going to go ahead and go over 8.1, law of sines. All right, with law of sines, you have to know this rule. Keep in mind, when you're using law of sines, these are not right triangles. They're oblique triangles, okay? So like we did last class, we should know that when I'm looking at this, your angles and your sides are opposites, okay? Meaning I have capital letters for my angles, lowercase letters for my sides. And you're going to take the same ones and they're going to be across from each other. So here's my A's, here are my B's, and these are my C's, okay? Law of sines is super important for you to know. It's right here. So if you're looking at it, side A goes with angle A, which again, it's called law of sines, so it's sine A. Okay, B, side B over side or angle B, which is sine B, and same thing with C. Now, when I'm solving this, it depends on what I have to find. I can also write this rule as sine A over A. I could write it as sine B over B and sine angle C over C. And you're going to see that in the two examples that I'm going to use the formula flipped. Okay, so now it depends. If I'm solving for my sides, this is what I'm going to use. Solve for side. And this one is solve for angle. All right, looking at this example, it says solve the triangle. Remember, when you have a question that says solve the triangle, you have to find all sides and all angles. Okay, and it says round your answer to the nearest hundredth. So first thing I like to do for this type of question is they're giving me angle C, they're giving me angle B, and side B. How do I know their angles? It's one, a capital letter, and I have a degree sign. Anytime you have the degree symbol, it has to do with an angle. So I'm gonna go ahead and first draw my triangle. Does not have to be perfect. And then I'm gonna label my A, B, and C. Now, does it matter where A, B, and C go? No. So I'm just gonna go ahead and put A, B, and C. Remember, capital letters go with angles and your lowercase letters go with your sides, but they have to be across from the corresponding letter. So this is going to be my lowercase a, this is going to be my lowercase b, and this is going to be my lowercase c. And again, I'm just going to highlight them just so you remember they have to be across from each other. I'm going to go ahead and label what I have. So angle C was 102 degrees, angle B was 29 degrees, and side B is 28 feet. Now looking at this, there's two things that we can find first, but I'm going to do the easier one. What's the measure of the interior of a triangle? We should know it. It's 180 degrees. So if I have two given angles, how would I find the third? All I have to do in order for me to find angle A is I'm going to add the two. 29 plus 102. If you add it, you're going to get 131 and then subtract it from 180. And you're going to get 49 degrees. So right now I found all my angles. The next thing I have to find are my sides. So finding my sides. How can I find my sides? I'm going to use law of sines. Why? Because this is not a right triangle. I cannot use SOHCAHTOA. So I have to use law of sines. Do I have a pair that's given to me? For example, do I have capital A and lowercase a? No. Do I have capital B and lowercase b? Yes. I am going to use that pair. What do I have to solve for? I have to solve for sides. So that means my sides are going to go on top. I'm going to have 28 over, remember it's sine your angle. I'm setting it equal to, what do we want to solve for first? A or C? Let's go ahead and do A, or let's do C, so we could kind of separate the purple from the green. So let's go ahead and do C. Do I know what side C is? No, I'm just going to represent it as lowercase c. Do I know what the angle is? Yes. Sine 102. Solving for C, I have to cross multiply. So cross multiplying, I'm going to get C times sine 29 equals 28 times sine 102. How can I get C by itself? I have to go ahead and divide by sine 29 on both sides of my equal sign. So all I have to do now is plug it into the calculator. 28 times sine 102, click enter, then divide by sine 29 and you should get your answer. If you plugged it in correctly on your calculator, your answer should have been for C. Lowercase c is 56.49. All right, now let's go ahead and look for our last side. So when I'm finding my sides, I like to use what's given. So for this one, I'm still gonna use B because B was given to me in the instructions. So I'm still solving for a side. So my sides are gonna go on top. So I have 28 over sine 29. And now I'm solving for A, setting it equal to, I don't know what this side of A is, but I do know the angle is 49. And same thing like we did before, cross multiply, I'm gonna get A times sine 29 equals 28 times sine 49. And like we did before, I have to divide to get A by itself and do that on the other side as well. So go ahead and plug it into your calculator and let's see if we get the same answer. All right, if you plugged it in correctly, your answer should have been side A equals 43.59. And that should have been your answer. So again, these you solved for your sides. All right, going ahead and solving this one. Same thing, solve for the triangle. So that means I have to find all sides and all angles, round my answer to the nearest hundredth. That is 2 digits after the decimal. So first thing I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna draw my triangle and then label. Remember, it doesn't matter where I put A, B, and C. So I'm gonna put A over here. I'm gonna put B over here and C over here, does not matter. But what matters is the corresponding letters. So capital A has to be opposite of lowercase a. Same thing with B. Same thing with C, and again, just highlighting them so we could see that they are opposites of each other. They're across from each other. And then I'm just gonna go ahead and label what I have. So angle A is 43 degrees. Side A we wrote as 24, and side C is 22. Now, looking at this, can I find the other two angles? No. Why? Because I don't know the measure. Okay, they're not going to be equal. They're not telling me that they're equal. So I can't do that. So do I have a pair? Do I have a matching pair? Which letter? A. So now I have to solve for an angle. Okay, so now I'm flipping that rule that we learned. So I do have A. I'm going to write it as now my angle's on top, sine 43 over side 24. And what can I solve here? What's my only option that I can solve for? Looking at it, what's my only option I could solve for? My only option is solving for angle C. So I'm going to go ahead and write it as sine C. Keep in mind it is a capital C over 22. Again, I am solving for my angle. It has to be written out like this. same thing we did before, cross multiply. I'm going to get 22 times sine 43 equals 24 times sine angle C. Now, how do I get sine angle C by itself? I'm going to divide by 24. Okay. Before I move anything over, I'm just going to go ahead and solve this on my calculator. So go ahead and plug it in. If you plugged it in correctly, I'm going to write it as 0.625165. I'm not going to round it until the very end. So I'm going to make sure I write a lot of extra digits. And how do I solve an angle? Okay, what you have to do is you have to use the inverse. So in this case, you're going to have sine -1 times 0.625165. Okay, now I'm solving for the angle. So you have to use that second button on your calculator to where you get that sine -1. So if you solved it correctly, angle C, yes, angle C is going to be 38.69 degrees. Please don't forget that degree sign. Okay, do not forget it. So because I have that angle, I'm just going to go ahead and write it in, just so we know it's 38.69. Now I can go ahead and solve for angle B. So now I can go ahead and solve. I'm going to go ahead and add 38.69 plus 43. I'm going to get 81.69. And then all you have to do is 180 minus 81.69. If you subtract it correctly from 180, you should have had 98.31. So just writing that angle B equals 98.31 degrees. And that would be my answer for angle B. The last thing we have to solve for is side B. All right, solving for side B, I am still going to use A. But now that I'm solving for a side, I'm going to flip it. So I have side, using A again, 24 over sine 43. And setting it equal to, I don't know what side B is, but I know that the angle is sine 98.31. Okay, and then I'm just going to go ahead and cross multiply. I'm going to end up with, just going to write it next to it, B times sine 43 equals 24 times sine 98.31. Okay, then I'm going to have to divide to get B by itself. Plug that into your calculator, and we should get the correct answer. If you plugged it in correctly, your answer for this should have been B equals, we're rounding to the nearest hundredth, 34.82 is your answer for this one. So make sure you understand why I'm flipping it. Depends on what I'm solving for. All right, now that was solving for the triangle, okay? The directions were solve the triangle, meaning I have to find everything. This one's asking for the area of an oblique triangle. So this is the rule you're using, given its side, angle, side. Okay, so a way to remember it is whatever the angle that they give you that goes with your sine, the other two letters are going to go in front. Now, instead of writing that fraction, I like to write it as BC sine angle A over 2, AB sine angle C over 2, and AC sine angle B over 2. So again, when you're multiplying, doesn't matter the order, but when you're given the angle, it goes with your sine. The other two letters go in front of it and you're multiplying everything. Then last, just divide by 2. I just don't like this fraction, so I put it over 2. All right, so let's go ahead and do these examples. It says find the area of the triangle around 2 decimal places. That's still 100th place. So looking at it, it says given side. These are my sides because it's lowercase. 52 meters, A is 90 meters, and angle C, because it's capital, is 102 degrees. So knowing the rule for area, I know my angle is going to go with my sine. And because it's C, that means A and B has to go in front. 90 times 52. And then divide everything by 2. So this is what it's going to look like. If you want to write the rule, it's your angle, then I have A times B times sine C, all over 2. All you have to do is plug it in on your calculator. 90 times 52 times sine 102, and then divide by 2. Good. If you plugged it in correctly, your answer for this should have been area is going to equal 2,288.87, and that's my answer for area. Okay, looking at the next one. All right, so same thing for this one. I'm just going to go ahead and write the rules so we have it. I'm going to use the angle with my sine. So sine angle A, which is 80. And because that's A, that means B and C has to go in front. So it's 24 times 18. And I'm still multiplying that times sine 80 and dividing it by 2. So this is what I have. Go ahead and plug it into your calculator. I'm just going to write it up here. I have B, or you can do it as C times B sine A, and I'm still dividing it by 2. All right, if you plugged it in correctly, your area should have been 212.72 is my area, and that's what you should have had.